The phone vibrated in my hand, a relentless buzzing that felt like a warning siren. Carol's enraged face flashed on the screen, a pixelated mask of fury that used to fear more than anything. I slid my thumb across the screen to answer, not to apologize, but to witness the end of an era. Do you want us to starve, Sarah? Why aren't the cars working? I'm standing at the register looking like a complete fool. Her voice was a shrill drill, the same weaponized guilt she'd used to carve pieces out of me for years. But this time, the panic in her tone didn't trigger my usual anxiety. It only fueled a chilling, unfamiliar calm. I didn't say a word to defend myself. I just stared at the frozen image on my laptop screen, the undeniable reason why her credit limit had suddenly hit zero. It was a video file, accidentally forwarded to me just hours ago by my scatterbrained Aunt Lisa. In the shaky clip, my entire family sat around a table laden with lobster and the expensive wine paid for by my overtime shifts, laughing until they choked. I watched my mother raise a crystal glass, her face twisted in a mocking sneer as she coasted to the walking ATM who was too desperate for their approval to ever say no more. The herd had burned off hours ago, leaving only cold, hard ash. With a single tap, I forwarded the video back to her while she was still screaming into the receiver about my selfishness. Silence fell on the line as the notification pinged. Then, I typed a message that would sever the umbilical cord of abuse forever. The walking ATM is out of order permanently. I hung up before she could draw a breath, but I knew this was far from over. The silence was just a deep breath before the scream. The notification on my phone screen lit up a dim room, casting a pale blue glow over my mismatched furniture. It was a deposit alert from the bank, my quarterly bonus. The number was significant enough to put a down payment on a house in a decent suburb, or perhaps finally replace the 10-year-old sedan he drove that rattled violently whenever he pushed it past 60. Most 27-year-olds with my job title senior financial analyst at one of the city's top firms would be popping champagne or browsing luxury travel sites. Instead, I let out a long, heavy sigh and set the phone face down on my scratched laminate table. I picked up my fork and stirred a chop of instant noodles that served as my dinner. Don't get attached yet, Sarah, I whispered to myself, the steam fogging up my glasses. I lived in a studio apartment on the edge of the city, a place where the sirens were a constant lullaby and the heating worked only intermittently. My wardrobe consisted of 3 high-quality suits for client meetings and a collection of fraying t-shirts for everything else. I was a ghost in my own life, a vessel through which money flowed, but never stayed. The vibration against the table made the plastic noodle chip tremble. I didn't need to look at the caller ID to know who it was. It was the first of a month, after all. Hey, Mom, I answered, forcing a cheerfulness into my voice that I didn't feel. Sarah? Honey, how are you? Carol's voice was warm, sugary sweet. It was the tone she used when she wanted to remind me that we were a family, a unit that stuck together against the cruel world. You're working too hard, I can tell. You sound tired. I'm okay, Mom. Just finished a bee project. How are you? How's Dad? Oh, you know your father. She sighed, the tone shifting instantly to one of tragic martyrdom. His back is flaring up again. He can barely get out of the recliner. The doctor says he needs physical therapy, but the insurance copay is just, well, we told him he'd just have to live with the pain. We can't afford luxuries like that. The guilt hit me right in the chest, a familiar. Like, Mom, you know I'll cover the therapy. How much is it? Oh, Sarah, we couldn't possibly ask it of you, she sighed, waiting exactly 2 seconds before continuing. But it is about 600 for the initial sessions. And then there's the electric bill. It was higher this month. I don't know why. The house is just so old, honey. It drafts terribly. I looked at the duct tape holding my own window shut. Okay, send me the amounts. I'll transfer it tonight. You're such a blessing. She could. I don't know what we do without you. God really gave us an angel to look after us in our old age. I took a bite of the lukewarm noodles, swallowing the salty broth along with the praise. It was my currency. Their approval was the only thing I bought for myself. Is Emily around? I asked, shifting the phone to my other ear. She's out with friends, Carol sighed, her voice brightening. Poor thing husband studying so hard. She needed a break. You know how stressful her major is. Emily was 22, a perpetual student of art history, a degree of passion as my father called it. He had studied accounting because it was safe, because it paid. Emily was the golden child, the one with the spirit that couldn't be crushed by the weight of employment. Actually, Sarah, since you brought her up, Carol's voice lowered, conspiratorial now. She has this study abroad opportunity in Florence. Is vital for her thesis. But the program fees are due next week. I closed my eyes, rubbing the bridge of my nose. Florence, Mom, that sounds expensive. I just paid her tuition for the semester. It's an investment in her future. Carol snapped, the sweetness evaporating for a split second before returning. Besides, David and Andy have given everything to raise you girls. We have nothing left. If you can't help your sister, who will? Do you want her to fail just because we're poor? No more. Of course not, I sighed automatically. The script was burned into my brain. We sacrificed for you. US. Don't be selfish. How much? 3,000. Bruce a little spending money. You don't want her starving in Italy. My bonus. Sir, it went. The imaginary house. The non-rattling car. The savings account he desperately tried to build all this out into a trip to Italy you would never take. I'll send it. I sighed, my voice flat. Wonderful. I'll tell her. She'll be so thrilled. Maybe she'll even bring you back a souvenir. We said our goodbyes, and the silence rushed back into the room, louder than before. I opened my banking app. My fingers moved with muscle memory, navigating the transfer screens. Transfer to Mom dan Dad. Amount, $600,000. Memo, that's back. Transfer to Emily. Amount, $4,000. Memo, Italy. I stared at the remaining balance. It was still healthy, thanks to my salary, but the accumulation the safety net was gone. Again, I walked over to the small kitchenette to wash my fork. The faucet leaked, a steady drip 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 that the landlord refused to fix. I stared at the water swirling down the drain. I told myself this was noble. I told myself he was the strong one, the pillar. My parents had struggled my whole childhood, shielding Emily and me from the worst of it, or so I believed. Now that he had made it was my duty to lift them up. But as I looked around my cramped apartment, seeing the peeling paint in the corner and the stack of wood files on the floor, a treacherous thought whispered in the back of my mind. Why did lifting them up always feel like holding myself down? I shook my head, physically dispelling the thought. They were my family. They loved me. They just needed help. My phone buzzed again. A text from Emily. OMG, thanks for the transfer, Sarah. You're the best. BTW, Mom said you might cover my shopping for the trip too. Need cute outfits for the museums, lol. Love you. I stared at the screen for a long time. I typed sure, just keep it reasonable, then deleted it. I typed I can't, I'm tapped out, then deleted that too. Finally, I typed, send me the links. I turned off the light and I lay on my lumpy mattress, staring at the ceiling, waiting for sleep to take me away from the math that never seemed to add up in my favor. The afternoon sun was dragging itself across my living room floor, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to mark the sluggish patch of my workday. I had been staring at the same spreadsheet for the better part of an hour, the cells blurring into a meaningless grid of gray and white. My apartment was silent, save for the rhythmic humming of the refrigerator and the occasional tap of my fingers against the keyboard. It was the kind of Tuesday that felt like it had been dipped in molasses, slow, sticky, and utterly uneventful. My phone sat face up on the desk, a sleek black monolith that usually served as a distraction I tried to ignore. When the screen lit up, illuminating the dim corner of the room, I didn't reach for it immediately. I finished typing a sentence, took a sip of lukewarm coffee, and I only then glanced over. A notification from the Miller clan. I suppressed a sigh. The family group chat was a chaotic entity usually reserved for blurry photos of my cousin as toddler, political memes from Uncle Jerry the number one asked for, and my mother asking if anyone knew how to fix her iPad from 3 states away. But this time, the name on the screen wasn't my mom or Jerry. It was Aunt Lisa, Carol's sister. Lisa was the glamorous one, the aunt who always smelled like expensive vanilla and the aged Chardonnay, the one who bought US impractical gifts and rolled her eyes at my mother's neuroticism. She wasn't particularly tech-savvy, but she knew enough to post photos of her brunch. I picked up the phone, expecting a picture of a mimosa, or perhaps a new handbag. Instead, Sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a video thumbnail. Sir was no more caption, just a 3-minute video file sitting sir, loading. I tapped it, more out of muscle memory than genuine interest. The video expanded to fill the screen. The angle was low, unflattering, and shaky, the camera clearly propped up against something unstable, perhaps a stack of books or a vanity mirror. The lighting was dim, golden and intimate, slicing through the room like it was a hotel suite at sunset. And sir was Lisa. She wasn't wearing her usual sharp blazer or the oversized sunglasses she used to shield herself from the world. She was wearing a silk robe, one he had never seen before, the fabric slipping loosely off her shoulder. My stomach gave a violent lurch. Hey, you! Lisa's voice parried from the speaker. It was a tone he had never heard her use softer, huskier, stripped of her usual beating wit. I froze. My thumb hovered over the pause button, but shock paralyzed my motor functions. You know you shouldn't be sending this, she continued, running a hand through her hair, looking directly into the lens with a heavy-lidded gaze that made my skin crawl with second-hand embarrassment. But I can't stop thinking about last night. Jerry is completely clueless, as usual. He thinks I'm at a spa. My breath hitched in my throat. The air in my apartment suddenly felt too thin. Jerry was her husband of 20 years. Jerry, who was currently the sole admin of this very group chat. I miss your hands, she whispered, leaning closer to the camera. I miss the way you look at me. It makes me feel alive. God, I haven't felt alive in years. The video was still playing, but the sound seemed to drop away, replaced by the rushing of blood in my ears. This wasn't a mistake. This was a catastrophe. This was a nuclear bomb dropped into the digital living room of our family, and the timer had already hit 0. I scrambled to check the read by status. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Read by Sarah, just me. For now, panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the fog of my shock. It was pukul 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Most of the family was at work. Mom Carol was likely in a meeting. Uncle Jerry drove a delivery truck. He wouldn't check his phone until his shift ended. But my cousins, my younger sister, Emily, who lived on her phone, I had to stop this. I tapped the screen frantically, exiting the video. The thumbnail still sat there, innocuous and terrifying. I couldn't delete it. I wasn't an admin. Only Mom, Jerry, and Lisa had those privileges. Oh my God, I whispered to the empty room. Oh my God, Lisa. I switched tabs, my fingers fumbling as I dialed her number. It rang, and rang, and rang. Hey, this is Lisa. Leave a message, and make it fabulous. Lisa, I practically screamed into the voicemail, my voice cracking. Check the group chat, the family chat. Delete it. Delete it now. You uploaded the wrong video. I hung up and immediately dialed again. Voicemail. I switched back to WhatsApp. The message was still sir. The timestamp marked me. 2:03 p.m. It had been up for 3 minutes. It felt like 3 years. I typed a direct message to her. Unclear. Family chat. Delete the video now. Jerry is in sir. The check marks remained gray. She wasn't looking at her phone. She had probably recorded it, hit send, and then hopped into the shower or gone to get a massage, thinking she had privately messaged her lover. I stared at the group chat, terrified the Anubablu would appear. If Mom Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam this. Carol and Lisa had a relationship that was already held together by dog tip and the passive-aggressive comments at Thanksgiving. Discovering that her sister was cheating on Jerry, whom Mom adored, wouldn't just cause a fight. It would cause a war. Then, the worst possible thing happened. Typing. Someone was typing in the group chat. My eyes locked onto the indicator at the bottom of the screen. Who was it? There was no more name, just a green text notifying me that someone, somewhere, was about to react. Please be a bot. Please be a mistake. A message popped up. Grandma, I can't open the video. Dear, my internet is acting up again. Is it one of the day? I let out a breath that sounded like a sob. Grandma, thank God for bad rural internet and the tech illiteracy. I typed back, my fingers flying. Don't worry about it, Grandma. It's just a mistake file. Don't try to open it. It might have a virus. It was a lie. A stupid, desperate lie, but it was all I had. Grandma, oh my, a virus. I better turn off the phone. One down, but the ticking continued. I tried calling Lisa a third time. This time, she picked up on the second ring. Sarah, her voice sounded breezy, light. I'm literally just walking into the sauna. Honey, what's Lisa? Shut up and listen to me. I snapped, the adrenaline overriding any sense of familial hierarchy. You uploaded a video to the Miller family chat. The one for your friend. There was a silence on the other end of the line so profound it felt like the signal had died. What? Her voice was barely a whisper. The video. I hissed, watching the chat screen like a hawk. The one where you tell about Jerry. It's in the family group. Grandma Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam Ipa couldn't open it. I told her it was a virus. No more one else has seen it yet. You have to delete it. Right now, I heard a gasp, followed by the clattering sound of a phone being fumbled, perhaps dropped onto a tile floor. Sir was swearing hard, frantic cursing that sounded nothing like my polished aunt. I can't. My hands are shaking, she whimpered. Sarah, I can't find the button. Where is it? Oh God, oh God. Long press the video, I commanded, guiding her like an air traffic controller talking down a crashing plane. Select delete. Then select delete for everyone. Do not hit delete for me. Lisa? Focus. I'm trying. It's loading. On my screen, the video thumbnail stared back at me. The face of my aunt, vulnerable and illicit, a secret meant for the shadows now bathing in the digital light. Jerry is typing. My heart stopped. Lisa, I screamed into the phone. Jerry is typing. I did it. I hit it. she shrieked. On my screen, the text Jerry is typing persisted for one agonizing second. Then, the video thumbnail vanished. In its place, a small, gray italicized line appeared. This message was deleted. I slumped back in my chair, the phone nearly slipping from my sweaty palm. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting. Had he seen it? Had he seen enough? Or had he just opened the app to send a joke right as the message disappeared? A new message popped up. Uncle Jerry, what was that? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A video popped up and didn't disappear. Everything okay? Liz, I held my breath. The silence stretched. The fate of a 20-year marriage hung on the bandwidth of a 4G connection and did a quick sinking of a woman currently hyperventilating in a spa locker room. And Lisa, sorry, Parker dial video, just a black screen of the inside of my purse. So silly. Joe, it was flimsy. It was desperate. Uncle Jerry. Haha, classic Lisa. Alright, back to the grind. He stared at the screen. He bought it. Or he didn't care enough to question it. The phone was still against my ear. I could hear Lisa breathing, ragged, jagged gasps that sounded like she was on the verge of vomiting. He didn't see it, he sighed softly, my voice trembling. He thinks it was a mistake. Sarah, her voice was broken, stripped of all its veneer. Sarah, you sallallahu alaihi wasallam it. He did. You can tell your mother. Please, Sarah, please. It's complicated. You don't understand. He looked at the gray text on my screen. This message was deleted. The digital evidence was gone. The file was scrubbed from the server. But the image of her in that silk robe, the confession of her unhappiness, the betrayal of my uncle, it was burned into my retinas. The chat history was clean, but the family dynamic had shifted irrevocably. He was no more longer just a niece. He was a conspirator. He won't tell Mom. He sighed, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Thank you, she sobbed. Thank you. But Lisa, he added, looking at the rain that had started to streak against my window, matching the gray mood settling over the room. You need to fix this. Because next time, he might be in a meeting. And Jerry might be on his lunch break. He didn't wait for her answer. He hung up the phone and he sat face down on the desk. The silence rushed back into the room, heavy and suffocating. The spreadsheet was still there, the cursor blinking in cell D14, waiting for data that suddenly seemed completely irrelevant. He had saved the chat, but he knew, with a sinking certainty, that the explosion hadn't been stopped. It had merely been delayed. The bomb was still ticking. Only now, he was the one holding the detonator. The vibration of my phone against the cheap laminate of my kitchen counter was a dull, buzzing sound that usually signaled something mundane, a work email, a spam text, or perhaps a reminder for a bill he had already paid. He was midway through forcing down a dinner of instant ramen, the salty steam curling up into a face devoid of makeup and exhausted from a 10-hour shift. He picked up the device, wiping a smudge of blood from my thumb, and sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a notification from the family circle WhatsApp group. And Lisa had posted a video. He smiled faintly, assuming it was a birthday shout-out for cousin Mike or maybe a video of her new puppy. My family wasn't exactly warm, but we had our moments, or at least, he thought we did. He tapped the play button, leaning back in my squeaky chair, expecting a minute of wholesome distraction. The video opened with a chaotic, shaky pan Eva table laden with food. My stomach gave a hollow lurch, not from hunger but from recognition. He knew the restaurant. It was the Gilded Anchor, the most expensive seafood place in the city. He also knew exactly who had paid for the reservation. He had transferred $3,000 to my father just yesterday because he claimed the family needed a morale boost after a tough year. Look at this spread. Aunt Lisa's voice screeched from the phone's tiny speakers, panning over platters of garlic butter lobster, towers of chilled oysters, and king crab legs big enough to require a mallet. The camera swung round to face my mother, Carol. She was wiping grease from her chin with a cloth napkin, a glass of expensive Chardonnay in her other hand. She looked radiant, happy, and utterly relaxed. To the feast, Lisa cheered from behind the camera. Are we missing anyone? The camera focused on Carol. She let out a short, derisive chuckle that sounded like dry leaves scraping together. Missing anyone? Carol scoffed, swirling her wine. Hardly. It's better she isn't here. She just sit in the corner and check the prices on the menu, making everyone uncomfortable. She actually thinks we enjoy her company. Poor thing. My breath hitched. The ramen suddenly tasted like ash in my mouth. I froze, my thumb hovering over the screen, unable to pause, unable to look away. Oh, come on, Carol. Aunt Lisa giggled, the camera shaking as she laughed. Be nice. She paid for the lobster. And as long as she keeps paying, let her believe what she wants, Carol replied, spearing a scallop with vicious precision. It's a small price for her to pay for. Well, for being her. I felt the blood drain from my face, a physical sensation of cold rushing from my head to my toes. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, but the camera had already moved to Emily. My cousin, my sister in spirit, or so I had told myself, was speaking at a massive shrimp cocktail. She was wearing a silk blouse he had bought her for her birthday, claiming she needed something nice for job interviews. Did you see what she was wearing last week? Emily asked, rolling her eyes so hard it looked painful. Those shoes. I swear she's had them since high school. It's pathetic. She makes decent money, but she dresses like a homeless librarian. It's embarrassing to be seen with her. Maybe if she spent less on US, she could buy a mirror, someone off camera joked, and the table erupted in laughter. My hand was shaking so violently that the image on the screen blurred. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and stinging, but I blinked them away. I couldn't afford to miss a second of this. This was the truth. This was the reality I had been too blind, too desperate for laugh to see. The camera finally landed on the head of the table. My father, David, the man who had cried on the phone yesterday about his high blood pressure and the stress of his stats. He looked fine now. His face was flushed with wine and laughter. His posture relaxed as he cracked the crab code with a satisfying snap. Don't be too hard on her, girls, David sighed, his voice smooth and terrifyingly jovial. He pointed a battery finger at the camera. We have to keep the goose happy if we want the golden eggs. She's sensitive. We just have to keep being nice. Smile a bit, tell her we love her. And the money won't stop. Cheers to that. Emily raised her glass. The hour walking ATM, David bellowed, raising a lobster tail in a mug toast. May she never get a backbone. The table roared with laughter. It was a sound he had heard 1,000 times at family gatherings, a sound he used to think he was a part of. But now, listening to echo in my silent, lonely kitchen, I realized he had never been part of the joke. It was the punchline. A cold, hard clarity washed over me, instantly vaporizing the shock. It was a survival instinct he didn't know he possessed. My heart was breaking, shattering into a million irreparable swords, but my mind was sharpening into a weapon. Record. I swiped down the control center of my phone with a trembling finger and hit a screen record button. A little red dot appeared in the corner of my screen. I prayed the video wouldn't end, that the connection wouldn't fail. I watched it again as it recorded. I watched my mother mock my loneliness. I watched my cousin mock the sacrifices he made to clothe her. I watched my father reduce my entire existence, my filial piety, my love, down to a transactional label. Walking ATM, 3 seconds, 5 seconds. The video looped. I let it play through one more time, capturing every pixel of their betrayal, every decibel of their greed. I needed the timestamps. I needed the names visible in the chat header. I needed irrefutable proof. My chest felt tight, as if an iron band was constricting my lungs, but I forced myself to breathe. In, out, safe. I stopped the recording. The video file saved in my gallery. I immediately opened my cloud storage and I uploaded it to a hidden folder, then emailed a copy to myself. Ideally, the timing couldn't have been more perfect. Just as the upload complete notification slid across the top of my screen, the WhatsApp chat shifted. The video in the chat vanished. A message appeared in its place. This message was deleted. My phone pinged again. A new text from Aunt Lisa. Oops, wrong chat. Sorry Sarah. Just a boring work video. Hope you're having a good night, sweetie. I stared at the text. The audacity was breathtaking. Wrong chat. That meant there was a right chat. A chat without me. A chat where they coordinated his dinners, shared their spoils, and he laughed at the fool who funded it all. She thought she had been quick enough. She thought he was the same Sarah who would be asleep by now, or too busy working to check her phone. She thought he was stupid. He looked down at my cold ramen. He looked at the fraying cuff of my sweater, the pathetic clothes Emily had marked. He thought about the vacation he hadn't taken in 5 years because Dad needed help with the mortgage. He thought about the dating life he didn't have because he was always working overtime to cover Carol's medical bills that apparently didn't prevent her from drinking Chardonnay. Walking ATM, he whispered to the empty room. The words tasted metallic. He didn't reply to Lisa. He didn't scream. He didn't call them to demand an explanation. That was what the old Sarah would have done, cried and he asked why she wasn't enough. The old Sarah would have begged for an apology they didn't mean. But the old Sarah had died the moment David raised that lobster tail. He stood up and he walked to the sink, dumping the noodles down the drain. He wasn't hungry anymore. He felt lighter, strangely unburdened. The weight of their expectations, the heavy cloak of my own guilt and the obligation, had just been lifted by their own cruelty. He walked back to the table and he picked up my phone. He opened my banking app. Transfer scheduled, $1,5 ke Mom for utilities tomorrow. Cancel. Recurring transfer, $800 ke Emily for tuition support. Cancel. Joint credit card David dan Sarah. Status, aktif. Action, report lost atau stolen, freeze account. He watched the confirmations pop up one by one. It was the most satisfying thing he had ever seen. He wasn't just freezing their funds. He was severing the lifeline they had been strangling me with. He opened the video in my gallery one last time. He paused it on my father's red, laughing face. You wanted a walking ATM? He sighed softly. My voice steady and he called, Sorry, Dad. This machine is out of order. He turned off the lights in the kitchen, leaving the darkness to swallow the silence. For the first time in years, he was going to sleep well. The war had started, and they didn't even know they had fired the first shot. But he had the ammunition now, and he wasn't going to miss. The glow of my laptop screen was the only source of light in the apartment, casting long, harsh shadows against the walls that seemed to mimic the jagged edges of my resolve. For years, he had been the frantic peacekeeper, the one who smoothed over every rock edge with a swipe of a card or a quiet transfer of funds. He had bought their love, or at least their tolerance, with a currency he had traded my life to earn. But tonight, the silence in the room wasn't empty. It was heavy, pregnant with the weight of a decision that could not be undone. He didn't pache. He didn't cry. He didn't drift along. Tear-stained letter explaining how they had let me die, how their betrayal had finally severed the last tendon of my loyalty. Confrontation was messy. It allowed for excuses, for gaslighting, for the manipulative tears my mother could summon on command. No more. This required something surgical. My finger hovered over the trackpad, the cursor blinking expectantly next to the manage user stop on my primary credit card portal. This was the mind vein, the arterial supply that kept their lifestyles oxygenated. Let's start with you, Mark, he whispered to the empty room. He clicked on my brother's name. A list of recent transactions unfurled like a receipt of my own stupidity. VIP club entry, designer sneakers, a bar tab that cost more than my first car. He had looked me in the eyes 3 days ago and he told me he was struggling to find himself, all while wearing a watch he had paid for. He didn't feel the pang of guilt he usually felt when he sighed no more. He felt a cold, metallic satisfaction. He selected cancel card. The bank's website threw up a warning pop-up. Are you sure? This action is immediate and it cannot be reversed without any application. I am more sure than you have ever been, he sighed, my voice steady. Click. Mark was gone. Next was my sister, Elena. Her supplementary card was strictly for emergencies, a definition she had struck to include spa weekends and the online shopping sprees at pukul 2 a.m. He looked at the pending charge for a boutique hotel in the city. She was probably right now, laughing with friends, potting the champagne on my tab. Cancel card. The digital confirmation flashed green. It was intoxicating. It was a power trip unlike anything he had ever experienced in the boardroom. He was extinguishing their lights, one by one, and they didn't even know they were sitting in the deck yet. He navigated away from the credit cards and he logged into my checking account. This was the harder part, the part that required a stealing of the heart that he wasn't sure he possessed until this very moment. The standing orders, the automatic transfers, the rent for my parents' house, the house he didn't live in, but paid for, the utility bills for a family that couldn't be bothered to turn off a light switch because they knew Sarah would handle the bill. He scrolled down to the recurring payment labeled Mom and Dad rent. For a second, a memory surfaced, my mother's voice from last Thanksgiving, sharp and dismissive. You know, Sarah, money isn't everything. You are so much you've lost touch with what family means. You're cored. The irony tasted like copper in my mouth. She was right. He was cored. And they were about to find out just how cold it could get when the heating bill wasn't paid. He clicked delete standing order, then the electric bill, the water, the high-speed internet package Mark claimed he needed for his job search but used for gaming. He went down the list, methodically severing each lifeline. It wasn't a frenzy. It was a rhythmic, calculated dismantling of the infrastructure he had built to support people who despised the architect. The final step was the most personal. He picked up my phone and he opened the provider app. We were on a family plan, a massive data package that is fully funded. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam, their data usage bars, towering high above mine. They were streaming, scrolling, calling, leaving their lips on a bandwidth subsidized. He navigated to the line settings. Remove line, remove line, remove line. He watched the loading circle spin. It took 5 seconds. 5 seconds to shoot them off from the world. To sever the digital umbilical cord. When the screen refreshed, it showed only one active line, mine. He set the phone down on the table, face up. The silence returned, but now it felt different. It wasn't the silence of hesitation. It was the silence of a predator waiting in the tall grass. He leaned back in my chair, the tension in my shoulders finally beginning to dissolve. The financial pipeline, once an endless, gushing flow that they drank from without sinks, was now abruptly and completely shut off. The valve was rusted shut. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. The clock on the microwave read jam 8:14 p.m. It was Friday night. They would be out. They would be trying to pay for dinner, or trying to load a movie, or trying to make a call. At jam 8:22 p.m., my phone lit up. It was Mark. I watched the screen glow, the vibration buzzing against the wood of the table. He didn't reach for it. He just took a sip of water, watching the name dance across the screen. BZZ, BZZ, BZZ. The call went to voicemail. 30 seconds later, a text message appeared on the lock screen. Mark, hey, car got declined at the bar. Embarrassing lol. Singtaban flagged it. Called them ASAP. He let out a short, dry laugh. He thought it was a glitch. He thought it was a mistake. He couldn't conceive of a reality where he wasn't his safety net. 2 minutes later, Elena called. He let that go to voicemail too. Then my mother. The notifications started to pile up, a cascade of confusion turning into panic. Elena, my data isn't working. Did you forget to pay the bill? Mom, Sarah. Pick up. The Netflix log US out. It says payment method invalid. Mark, seriously, pick up. The guys are waiting. I need this sorted now. He said, sir. Babe, in the blue light of their desperation, Andy felt absolutely nothing but peace. The sheer audacity of their messages, the assumption that he had simply made an error, that he was merely incompetent rather than done only fueled my resolve. They weren't asking if he was okay. They were asking why the service had stopped. He picked up the phone, not to answer, but to perform one last action. He went to the settings and he enabled Do Not Disturb. Then, he powered the device down completely. The screen went black. The buzzing stopped. He walked over to the window and he looked out at the city lights. Somewhere outside, in a restaurant or a living room, but reality was crashing down on them. The waiter was coming with the card reader. The screen was buffering. The lights were, metaphorically and soon literally, going out. They would have to figure it out. For the first time in their lives, they would have to reach into their own pockets and find nothing but lint. He had carried them for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to walk with only my own weight. He took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air that felt cleaner, thinner, sharper. The reckoning had begun, and the loudest part of it was my absolute, unwavering silence. The peace had been almost hallucinogenic. For 3 days, he had lived in a world where my bank balance remained static, where my mornings weren't dictated by the crises of others, and where no light in my apartment didn't taste like impending doom. It was a silence he had orchestrated with the precision of a surgeon, cutting the necrotic tissue of financial dependency away from my life. But he knew, deep down, that the patient my family would wake up eventually. And when they did, they would be screaming. It started on a Tuesday afternoon. The phone, which had been sitting innocently on a coffee table beside a cooling cup of tea, suddenly spasmed. It wasn't a ring. It was a violent, continuous vibration that rattled the ceramic coaster. He stared at it. The screen lit up with a name that usually induced a Pavlovian response of checkbook reaching, Emily. It didn't pick up. He watched the call cycle through to voicemail, only for a text message to slap onto the screen seconds later. Then another. Then 3 more in rapid succession. Sarah, my card declined. I'm at the register. There's a line. Hello, it says insufficient funds. Put money in now. It's embarrassing. I have the limited edition collection in my hands. Don't do this to me. I felt a phantom twist in my gut. The old instinct to fix it, to save her from the minor humiliation of a declined transaction. I could picture her perfectly, standing in some high-end boutique, surrounded by mirrors and the harsh lighting, her face flushed not with shame, but with indignation. She wasn't worried about the money. She was worried about the optic. She was waiting for me to play my role, the invisible wallet that made her lifestyle possible. It took a sip of tea. It was lukewarm, but it tasted like victory. It didn't reply. By the time evening rolled around, the isolated incident with Emily had metastasized into a full-blown systemic failure of their parasitic ecosystem. The first of the months had come and gone, and the automatic transfers they relied on, the ones he had quietly cancelled, had failed to materialize. My phone was now buzzing so constantly it felt like it was going to vibrate off the table. The notifications piled up like wreckage. David, rent check bounced. Landlord is pissed. What is going on? David, call me. Emily, he had to leave the clothes. He literally had to walk out. I hate you. Mom, where are you? David says the rent didn't go through. Mom, pick up the phone. The sun began to set, casting long, bruised shadows across my living room floor. He hadn't moved. He was witnessing the collapse of a house of cards he had been holding up with my own spine for a decade. It was terrifying, yes, but it was also fascinating in a morbid, detached way. They weren't asking if he was okay. They weren't asking if he had lost my job, or if he was in the hospital, or if he had been robbed. They were only panicked because the faucet had run dry. Then, the final boss arrived. Thudding tone for my mother, Carol, sliced through the air. It was a shrill, demanding thrill that he had meant to change for years but never got round to. It sounded like an alarm. He looked at the screen. Mom calling. My heart hammered against my ribs, a traitor to my resolve. This was the hard part. Ignoring texts was passive. Rejecting a call was an act of war. But he needed them to know. He needed them to hear the voice of the person they had been bleeding dry. He slid my thumb across the screen and he lifted the phone to my ear. He didn't say hello. He didn't get the chance. What the hell is wrong with you? Carol's voice wasn't just loud. It was jagged. It distorted the speaker, shrill with a rage that seemed to vibrate in my own skull. So there was no more preamble, no more maternal warmth, just a raw, unadulterated fury of a woman inconvenienced. Hello, Major, he said, my voice surprised by its own steadiness. Don't you hello Major me, she screamed. Could hear her pacing. The background noise suggested she was in the kitchen, likely slamming cabinet doors for emphasis. Do you have any idea what kind of day we have had? Emily came home crying. Sarah, she was humiliated in front of her friends because you couldn't be bothered to check the balance. The balance is fine, he said calmly. My balance is perfectly fine. Then why didn't the transfers go through? She shrieked, her voice pitching up an octave. David called me in a panic. The landlord is threatening late fees. Late fees, Sarah. We don't have the money for that. Why is nothing working? He tried to use the card at the grocery store and it was declined. He had to put the steaks back. Steaks. She was buying steaks while he had been eating instant oatmeal to save for a deposit on a life of my own. The absurdity of it made me want to laugh, but he held it in. Nothing is working because he stopped it, he sighed. There was a silence on the other end. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the vacuum before an explosion. Excuse me, she whispered, the tone shifting from rage to something more dangerous than shock. He canceled the cards. He stopped the standing orders. He told you he was done. He sighed. He told you last week. You can't be serious. The manipulation gears were turning now, grinding loudly. Her voice trembled, a masterful performance of wounded frailty. After everything we've done for you, we raised you, we sacrificed for you, and now, when we need just a little help, you took us off, like we're strangers. It's not a little help, Mom, it's everything. You pay for everything. That is a lie. She spat, abandoning the frailty instantly. We are a family. Families help each other. But you've always been like this. Selfish. Hoarding your money while your brother and sister struggle. You think you're better than us, don't you? You think I'm done paying for David's rent and Emily's designer wardrobe? He replied, gripping the phone tighter. They are trying to find themselves. They need support. Carol yelled. Andy, what about me? What about your father? Do you want us to starve? Said it was. The golden arrow in her quiver. The absolute, undeniable guilt trip. Do you want us to starve? It closed my eyes. A year ago, the question would have broken me. He would have apologized, transferred the funds, and eaten the cost of my own dignity just to make the screaming stop. He would have visualized them wasting away, skinny and destitute, because he was too stingy to help. But today, he opened my eyes and he looked around my quiet apartment. He thought about the stakes she had to put back. He thought about Emily's designer clothes. He thought about David's refusal to get a second job because it was beneath him. They weren't starving. They were just hungry for my lifeblood. You won't starve, Mom, he sighed, my voice dropping to a register of chord. Hard fact. There is food in the fridge. David has a job, even if he doesn't like it. You have a pension. You won't starve. You just won't be able to live on my dime anymore. How dare you, she hissed. It gave you life. And I'm finally starting to use it, he countered. I am not the band anymore. If Emily wants clothes, she can get a job. If David wants to pay rent, he can work more hours. And if you want steaks, buy them yourself. If you hang up this phone, Carol threatened, her voice shaking with genuine disbelief that her control was slipping. Don't you dare think about coming over for Sunday dinner. Don't you dare expect US to be served for you when you file. Because you will file, Sarah, you need US. You really don't, he sighed. Sarah, listen to me, pulled the phone away from my ear. Her voice was still teeny and audible, screaming my name, demanding, taking, grasping. He looked at the red icon on the screen. He pressed it. The silence that rushed back into the room was heavy, instant, and absolute. It was the loudest silence he had ever heard. My hand was trembling, just a little, as he set the phone back down on the table. He stared at the black screen. He knew they were currently gathering, converging in the living room of my childhood home to spin a narrative of my betrayal, to paint me as the villain who abandoned them to the wolves. They would rage. They would play the victim. They would likely call back in an hour with anutactic tears, perhaps, or a medical emergency fabricated on the spot. But for now, the line was dead. The transfer was cancelled. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't hungry for their approval. I picked up my tea. It was cold, but I drank it anyway. My thumb hovered over the send button, a glass screen of my smartphone feeling cool against my skin despite the heat radiating from my trembling hand. It wasn't fear that made me shake. It was the adrenaline of a prisoner staring at an open gate. On the screen was the video file I had saved, a candid recording of my family mocking my sacrifices, laughing at my expense, and reducing my existence to a dollar sign. Below the attachment, I typed the words that would sever the lifeline he had foolishly maintained for a decade. The walking ATM is out of order permanently. I pressed send. For a moment, the room was silent. The air conditioner hummed, and the car drove by outside, oblivious to the nuclear bomb he had just dropped into the family group chat. Then, the chaos began. It started with a single read received from Carol. Then came the typing bubbles, appearing and disappearing in a frantic rhythm. My phone vibrated against the table, a harsh bass that sounded like an alarm. Sarah, what is this? Honey, don't be dramatic. It was just a joke. You know how we thought. We were just blowing off steam. You're crazy if you think we meant that. Stop overreacting. You watched the messages cascade down the screen, a war full of gaslighting and manipulation. They were following the script perfectly. First came the denial, then the invalidation of my feelings, and finally, the accusations of insanity. It was a masterclass in toxicity, a performance they had rehearsed on me since I was a child. But this time, the audience had left the building. My phone began to ring. It was my mother. It declined the call. Then my father declined. Then Emily. I stared at Emily's name on the screen. The sister he had put to private school. The one whose spring break trips he had funded while he stayed home and he worked overtime. She was calling to smooth things over. No more doubt, or perhaps to yell at me for upsetting mom and dad. It didn't matter. The girl in the video who laughed about bleeding me dry was the real Emily. The sister on the phone was just a phantom. It declined the call. With a methodical, chilling calm, I opened my contacts. It started with Carol, block caller, block on WhatsApp, block on social media, then David, block, then Emily, block. One by one, I silenced the voices that had dictated my self-worth for as long as I could remember. When it was finished, my phone was silent. The silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, pregnant with possibility. It was the sound of peace. The next morning, I went to the bank. I canceled the supplementary credit cards he had given them for emergencies that somehow always looked like designer handbags and the golf clubs. I changed the passwords to my streaming accounts, my online shopping profiles, and I verified that my bank accounts were solely in my name. I was surgical in my detachment. I didn't cry. I didn't waver. I just chewed the cords. The fallout was inevitable, but I only heard about it through the grapevine, distant echoes of a crash I wasn't around to witness. According to a sympathetic aunt who had long suspected the dynamic, reality hit my parents like a freight train. Without my monthly contributions, the mortgage on the oversized house was suddenly a looming threat rather than an afterthought. The country club membership was the first to go, then the least luxury cars. Forced to confront the math he had shielded them from for years, Carol and David had to do the unthinkable. They had to go back to work. My father took a job in logistics, managing a warehouse floor hard, grounding work that left him no more time for midday golf. My mother, whose resume hadn't been updated in 20 years, found herself working the reception desk at a dental office, answering phones and dealing with unruly patients. Though irony was not lost on me, she was finally experiencing the service role she had always treated with such disdain. Emily's fall was perhaps the hardest, but also the most necessary. The tuition for her prestigious, private liberal arts college was due, and the bank of Sarah was closed. There were tantrums, I heard, and threats to sue me for emotional distress, but legal fees cost money they no more longer had. She had to withdraw. The last I heard, she had enrolled in the local community college, and was working shifts at a coffee shop to pay for her textbooks. She was learning the value of a dollar the hard way, the only way that ever sticks. As for me, the silence he had cultivated began to bloom into something beautiful. For the first time in my life, my paycheck hit my account and stayed there. There were no more guilt trips, no more emergency medical bills for mysterious ailments, no more panic calls about overdue utilities. 3 months after the blockade, I stood on a driveway, looking up at a two-story craftsman house with a wraparound porch. It wasn't just a building, it was a sanctuary. The sole sign in the yard had a sticker across it that said under contract. My contract. I signed the papers with a hand that didn't shake. I moved in on a rainy Tuesday, the sound of the storm outside only amplifying the warmth and the safety he felt inside. He bought furniture that he liked, not what my mother claimed was proper. He painted the walls colors that made me happy. He filled the fridge with food he wanted to eat. But a true victory came 6 months later. He sat on a lounge chair, the white sand of the Maldives warm between my toes. The ocean stretched out before me, an endless expansive turquoise and the sapphire. A waiter placed a drink with a tiny umbrella on the small table beside me. He picked up my phone, but not to check for messages from them. Those channels were closed forever. He opened my banking app, looking at the healthy savings balance that was growing every month, then scrolled through the photos of my new home. He took a deep breath, tasting the salt air. The burden was gone. The heavy, suffocating weight of being the family mule, the scapegoat, the walking ATM it had dissolved. He took a sip of my drink and he looked out at the horizon. He had lost a family, yes. But looking at the peace that surrounded me, he realized he hadn't lost anything at all. He had finally found myself.